Welcome everybody to, this is our sixth listening session, serving small businesses in today's challenging times. And today we're going to talk about COVID-related employment questions. Just a couple little Zoom tricks in case everybody is not familiar, although I'm sure you're all experts by now. All your audio is muted. You do have control of that audio. If you take your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the mic icon on the left, and you also see a chat box icon. And most of you have found the chat box. We are recording, and just make sure that that is happening. And you are free to share this. We will send everybody, a registrant, a link as soon as we can. We will send you a copy of the slides today. Some of the slides are very information heavy. Yes, we will be sending you copies of the slides so that you can refer back to them. And we're also going to be popping a whole bunch of links into the chat box, and we will also make sure you have those as well in a follow-up email. Today, we're kind of doing the introduction. That's my job. And then we're going to move on to talking more about employment issues with Bianca Bloomquist of Small Business Majority and Sarah McNamara, the HR person. Bianca is the California, let's get her title right. California Policy and Engagement Manager for Small Business Majority, good friend of Cameo's. Mark Herbert sits on our board. Previously, Bianca served as legislative aide on Capitol Hill for a member of the House Financial Services Committee and as a legislative representative handling federal healthcare, transportation, and workforce issues. So she's well versed in this. And Sarah is the HR director for the media nonprofit Independent Television Services, a certified HR professional, and works with Cameo. And she has more than a decade of operational leadership and consulting experience in San Francisco for both for-profit enterprises and nonprofit organizations. So we're really grateful to have her there. And then we're going to talk for both of them. Bianca's going to mostly she'll talk about some of the programs and get into a little bit of the nitty gritty of the Workshare program. And then Sarah's got a whole panoply of programs that she's going to talk about regarding like the disability and things like that. So just to let everybody know, we are doing tomorrow a state and federal small business update at 1 p.m. And then after that, we're going to go weekly with our partner, Small Business Majority. And then on Tuesday, the profit and loss statements webinar is going to be led by Susan Brown. And she's got some exercises for you and, why you should care about a profit and loss statement in this times of COVID. It's, it's a really good way to help businesses decide what should their next move be. And I'm going to pop the links to register for that along with my our Cameo's COVID page into chat. Those are links for you, and we'll also send them around afterwards. I thought I'd just start off before we get into some of the details, some of the things that the state has done for that have a small business focus, so that, these are things that you can make sure that your clients know about, that there are severe limitations on utility and power shutoffs. They are done by jurisdiction. I'm going to post a link into where you can find out whether or not they've been that power won't be shut off for non-payment. Most of the jurisdictions have said that they would do that, as well as water. I'll post a link in a second in that. Also, the governor has issued a ton of executive orders. For example, he's issued one on evictions where jurisdictions can mandate that landlords cannot, that there's a moratorium on evictions. Those do have to be passed for per jurisdiction. So you'll have to look at where, depending where you live. Want to let everybody know that Covered California, the health insurance is reopened. I'll post a link to that. If your clients have job openings, that's great. But they could post them on Onward California. And contracting opportunities through the government are advertised through on this website here. So I'm going to pop those resources for you into chat now. Okay, and just so you know, we're going to move, I'm going to go hand it over to Bianca, but before I do, I wanted just to let everybody know, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I wanted to let everybody know that we did invite EDD onto this webinar, but here's the message that I got from them. Unfortunately, the EDD is unable to participate today. Thank you for the invitation, but we have all hands on deck and are stretched thin right now to provide direct services to our customers, which are people who lost their jobs. In lieu of participation, they sent me a number of websites that I will also be popping into chat and sending to you all as we move forward. And EDD is in the process of developing their own weekly webinar, and they'll have it available and they'll let us know. We'll make sure that you all are aware of that webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Bianca to get us started on some of these employment issues.
Cool. Thanks, Heidi. Hi, all. I'm going to share my screen really quick. I want to make sure that I can be able to share this with you. Is it minimized right now? I think I have to make it bigger. Can you see that full screen?
It's a little small. Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
All right, cool. And thank you for that that preface, Heidi, about EDD. You know, I think wouldn't be a surprise to anybody that this is it would be preferable for EDD to be giving this presentation, but I'm gonna go ahead and do my best because we were actually on the 20th able to record a conversation with Eric from Gattaca from EDD about some of these programs. So I was able to reference that. So most of this will be from that. I've tried to update it as best as I could. So again, keeping this pretty broad level, hopefully the HR experts can maybe dive into this a little bit more. So you're all familiar with Small Business Majority. Maybe you weren't familiar with the fact that we're a national nonprofit, which has been really helpful in times like these, so we can try to get the most up-to-date information from Capitol Hill to folks as possible. But considering even lobbyists can't get through, we're all kind of finding out at the same time. So I'm going to go quickly through the SBA loan relief program. As a friendly reminder, outside of the Paycheck Protection Program and Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the SBA is paying the principal, interest, and fees of current and new 7A 504M microloans. New ones up until about the end of September of this year. Some of you might be hearing about the Employee Retention Credit. Here's some information about it. The maximum credit is $5,000 per employee, which kind of means, frankly, this is not for a lot of our clients. I think a lot of the business owners that Small Business Majority works with have about 4 employees or so, so the Employee Retention Credit isn't quite as applicable. However, folks are hearing about it, and it's important to know, have access to this program, especially as it differs from some of the other tax credits that were associated with the FFCRA, the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act, sorry, in phase 2 of the stimulus packages, and that is in regards to the expanded and emergency paid family leave tax credits that are available to small business owners. If your clients have questions about that, or you would like a general overview, we're happy to hop on the phone with you at any time. A smaller program, but still important, and I know that we cover a lot of you are members of the JETI committee stakeholder meeting, so I know this has been covered there, but the Express Bridge Loan Pilot Program is particularly useful for businesses that already have a relationship with an SBA Express lender. In cases like these, they may be able to access the 25K more quickly than the economic injury disaster loan. Again, it's considered a bridge loan, so not necessarily something that that would take the place, but just to kind of tide some folks over. So I'm going to talk a lot about the WorkShare program. I usually like to give people a pros and cons list right away, but unfortunately, I didn't quite have the time, so I'm just going to tell you. But the largest con coming from a small business owner advocacy perspective with the WorkShare program is that, at least as of a couple weeks ago, it's very paper oriented. I've been keeping my eyes and ears peeled for updates from the governor's office about moving that process online. I haven't seen that. If anyone has, please correct me. But as far as I am aware, it's still a very paper heavy process. So that can be an obvious challenge for small business owners. But it might also be something that now would be a time that they'd be able to consider something like this. But essentially, the purpose of the WorkShare program is in the name. It's to share the work and distribute it amongst folks. It's supposed to be a cost-saving alternative to laying off your workforce, which, as we know, can be an expensive process for small business owners. So it minimizes and eliminates the needs for layoff, and it allows small business owners to retain their talented workforce. It also allows employees to not have to withdraw from unemployment benefits. And it's very distinct. It's distinct from the unemployment insurance program. The WorkShare program is a completely separate department, whereas with typical unemployment insurance, the economic development department would work with the WorkShare program. The employer works with the EDD to develop a WorkShare program and then submit claims towards it. Can everyone hear me okay? I just got a notification that my internet's unstable.
You went out for just a second. It wasn't too bad, Bianca. So this is something that a business owner would go to the EDD with and say, "Hey, I want to do this." Bianca, oh, we just lost Bianca. Now we did. Bianca, maybe turn off your video.
Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm so sorry about that, you guys. Yeah, I'll turn off my video.
Yeah, you froze. Sometimes if you turn off your video, it will.
Yeah, no worries. Let me try that right now. Stop video. Okay, I didn't even realize it was on. Okay, so work sharing employer plan eligibility. So the key takeaways for the WorkShare employer plan eligibility is at least 2 employees need to be participating. So if your client has only 2 employees, this would conceptually work for them, but you need to have at least 2. At least 10% of the workforce or work units would need to be enrolled in the WorkShare program, and you have to maintain the same level of retirement and health benefits as prior to the start of the program. Which is important. However, it does not need to be the same level of benefits across different departments. So for example, with a restaurant, you know, oftentimes managers will have a different plan than their servers or host staff. It can still be different, but it has to remain uniform amongst the departments. This gives you kind of an idea of the reduction in work and wages that folks that would be interested in the WorkShare program would need to look at. So it's really for those employers that are in that gray area. Let's say they're not quite operating at 0%, but maybe 30%, 50% of their typical work. The WorkShare program might be an option for them. If it's less than 10%, all folks involved would probably be better off in just participating in the typical unemployment insurance program. this is how it is calculated. Obviously, we'll provide these slides to you afterwards, so you can go ahead and kind of punch these numbers in yourself. But this is assuming a 450 weekly benefit amount, how it would be calculated with the reduction, and what kind of benefits would be owed at the end of all of the calculations.
Can you go back to that?
100%.
Okay, yeah. So whatever the percentage of the hours is the reduction in the schedule times the benefit amount that they would have gotten.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this is telling me. Again, this is where having Eric answer some specific questions about different situations would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a business owner would simply plug in these numbers as best they could.
Yeah. And they would get that, they work with the EDD to do this plan, a business owner.
Yep, and I'm getting to how.
Okay, I'll shut up.
But it's something that they would, it's basically a work plan that they would create and then submit to the EDD. For employee eligibility, the employee must be regularly employed, so it can't be like a temporary worker or seasonal. It has to be someone who is regularly employed. The regular workforce, again, not temporary, not seasonal. Employee must have a normal work week with no hour or wage reductions prior to participating in work sharing. So this is really important right now because as small businesses, especially in the restaurant industry or others, are considering, you know, furloughing their employees, if they have laid off a pretty sizable number of their workers, they would no longer be eligible to participate in a work share program. So the work share program, for all intents and purposes, is for small businesses that have continued to operate semi-normally to an extent, and not those that are considering rehiring back their workers, their workforce. These are all the fun EDD hyperlinks that are included with getting your feet wet in the work share program. Again, it's a very heavy, paper-heavy process, as you can see, but there are the employer requirements and criteria because, again, this is different than typical UI in that it is the employer that's participating in this program. They would apply. And then there are intermittent, I think I get to that, maybe not. There is intermittent reporting that also needs to happen with the work share program. So employers need to continually communicate with the EDD if they're participating in the work share program. And it is not meant to be, it is not meant to be a long-term thing. It is only supposed to be temporary. So that kind of explains the heavier workload when it comes to reporting. So I included this information just because it is so new, and I feel like it would be really helpful for Cameo members to keep this in mind, as with every SBDC you know, update they give Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, you inevitably have folks asking about PUA or unemployment insurance. So I just kind of pulled these together to help me understand the framework for which PUA was created. So the pandemic additional compensation, that's the actual name for the $600 a week federal money that we've been hearing about that folks will get from the federal government, in addition to whatever the state decides to give folks that are unemployed. So it was established under the CARES Act, and the additional benefits, so the $600 a week from the feds, is available through 7/31, but for those of us in California, the last full week of benefits will end on 7/25. So again, the pandemic additional compensation is the $600 blanket per week to folks that are unemployed due to COVID-19. So PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. So this is the program that folks are patiently waiting for. It's a federal program, but it's administered through states' labor departments, for California through our Economic Development Department. So again, it's a federal program, and essentially it enables states to expand their own unemployment insurance programs. PUA will help unemployed Californians who are business owners, self-employed, independent contractors, etc. Those folks that are typically ineligible and are ineligible currently in California to receive unemployment insurance benefits will be able to receive PUA benefits through this program. Not yet, but soon.
Tuesday. It opens on, oh, there you go.
Yeah, April 28th, hopefully.
Yeah,
We'll see. And we
nervous
know,
laughter.
yeah, and we know 30% of California workers describe themselves as one of these things. So this is a pretty large segment of the population that will be able to benefit from the expanded unemployment insurance.
There's a question in chat, Bianca. When will the $600 a week start?
It's supposed to have started. So I think I go into it here. But if you are collecting unemployment, I think that it is supposed to have already begun.
Yeah.
Because
I have a friend who received it, so.
okay.
In California.
Okay, great. Yeah, because it was part, and again, it's the federal program. This is outside of what you would get through EDD if you are employed, and it should have already started. So essentially, to calculate how much you would receive and for how much one would receive and for how long, you would take the state amount, which varies by the state, and then just add $600 a week to it until 7/31 in California, 7/25. After 7/25, folks would just receive whatever is given by the state. So PUA, remember, it's federal and it's temporary. It's not supposed to take the place of state unemployment insurance. It's supposed to essentially supplement it for a lot of folks, or expand it, I mean. So if the state benefit runs out, you can apply for a 13-week extension from the PUA. I have no idea what that extension looks like, so I can't answer any questions about the extension, what the criterion might be yet, because we haven't figured it out. But if folks are already on unemployment, they can then file for the extension.
And for the unemployed, for the self-employed and, oh, there you go. For the self-employed and gig workers, you're going to get to that, so never mind. It is retroactive.
Yeah.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah, no worries. Don't worry. If there ever was a question after, it's me. And I made this for my team because I had these, we all did. But anyway, so how it will look like in California is at least $167 per week for the period between February and the end of March. And then the second phase is $167 plus the PUA, which is the $600 a week. That 167 number is the base for EDD. For each week unemployed between March and then July 25th, there's that 7/25 date again for California. And then the phase after 7/25, again, PUA would be no longer, at least unless you have filed for an extension at that point, with the base at $167 from July 26th through the end of the year.
And I have one question, Bianca. Is the 167, can it go up to the 450 that everybody else can get, if depending on the
Depending
income?
on how much you make and how you would qualify for your standard unemployment insurance through the state of California. I'm just saying it's at least 167.
Okay, got it. So this is for any clients, any of your clients who are gig workers or self-employed, if they are having issues.
Yeah, right. So if your clients are not sure if they would qualify or who would, EDD seems to be recommending folks file for regular unemployment insurance, and then EDD will determine the eligibility. So independent contractors, self-employed, sole proprietors, gig workers, a lot of different folks that kind of fall in that realm of that kind of vague term of self-employed would likely be eligible. But if they're not sure for any reason, to just file for regular unemployment insurance benefits, and then EDD will come back with your eligibility.
This is a question in the chat. If they file after next week, should they file after next week or they will be denied now? Like if they file now and they turn out that they're an independent contractor?
That's a good question. So as far as I have heard from different places, it sounds like they should just go ahead and file. You know, my colleague Mark gave a pretty good webinar on an independent contractor huddle, and it was more or less kind of recommended that folks just go ahead and apply. You know, and not necessarily wait for 428. But if they do know they would fall into that category and could wait that week to perhaps do it, because we also know that Governor Newsom had waived that 1 week waiting period that typically happens with unemployment insurance in California.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then another question, the same person that asked that said one of their clients was recently denied. She's self-employed. So she should probably then apply again next week.
Yep.
Yep.
She was denied. That's the EDD telling her that she's ineligible for typical state UI, and that on 428, the PUA, the federal pandemic unemployment insurance program, should cover her.
Yeah. And then there's another question about using ITIN numbers.
Okay, that's a great question. And I have that in my notes that I can't seem to access. Here, just give me a second.
You can come back to that. Why don't you keep going and we can come back to that one.
I have that addressed in some of my notes, but unfortunately I don't remember off the top of my head.
I wrote it down, don't worry. We'll make sure it gets answered.
Thank you. So some things to note, brand new program, obviously, the portal hasn't even gone live yet. I mean, it will be that portal, and we're, you know, so don't, you know, share that too widely because there's nothing there yet. But once everything goes live on the 28th, everything should be available on the website. But we have to wait for more information. A lot of the ins and outs are not known yet, like when or how to apply exactly. And then EDD needs to staff it on top of it. Everyone and their mom has a portal, COVID-19 portal, so do we. But ours is a little unique, again, in that we have EDD webinars on demand. Believe me, Eric is far more knowledgeable about these programs than I am, but that is available on demand on our website.
And if anybody has questions for EDD between now and what we go through with Sarah, whatever we're not able to answer from the EDD perspective, we can please type them into chat, and I have a connection there that he will answer me, and we will also send that out.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. I'll remember that.
So great. Bianca, you went through that last slide. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that Small Business Majority is counting on stories from small businesses. So if your clients have any stories, good and bad, that they want to share, or how they're trouble that they're having accessing these things, please make sure that you share that with them. And like I said, you'll get this information, or you can email Bianca on the. I'm sure she'll be happy to pass that on.
Can I also add something, Heidi? Just because I imagine that we'll get questions on this because it's like PPP everything, but like a lot of people are curious as to how unemployment insurance and paycheck protection program funds and EIDL work and commingle. So again, one of those things that remains to be seen. But theoretically, in the way that we suspect it will play out is that you can take these things sequentially. So if you are a self-employed individual, you've applied for PPP and you were previously denied, or you're still in limbo with PPP or EIDL, you could theoretically begin to participate in unemployment insurance through the regular EDD program, because PUA isn't, or through PUA or EDD, depending on your situation. But if you're self-employed through PUA, and let's say then you were to receive your PPP funds, you would then discontinue receiving those benefits and continue to pay yourself via PPP. through the Paycheck Protection Program. And then when those funds end 8 weeks after you take the loan amount, then you could then resume your
unemployment.
yeah.
Right. No double dipping. In other words, you're not going to get PPP and unemployment at the same time.
Right, right. And that's why it's so important that at this time when things that they are expecting folks to sure that they report any outside wages that they are getting into the EDD website.
Great. Well, Bianca, that was a lot of information. I'm going to hold any more questions until after we turn our attention to Sarah. I'm going to ask Bianca you to stop sharing your screen and turn it over to Sarah McNamara, who is Cameo's HR guru, and she is also the HR person. So she is the HR person. So Sarah, I am going to give it to you to take it away, and she's going to talk about all these benefits and how you can help out from the employer's point of view, how you as an employer can help, can get access to them, as well as help your clients get access to them.
Hello, can you all hear me? Am I being heard?
You are being heard loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. I think there's going to be a lot of crossover with what I'm going to present today with what Bianca presented. But we'll just go through this. I also created these slides into a PDF, and there's a lot of links in them that you can just hit on the PDF and they'll open up for you. So this is not meant to be comprehensive. It's an overview of what kind of benefits and leave are out there for you and your employees. So let's see if I can get through this. Go back. So the basic government support out there is with California. I'm assuming we're all in California. I don't know. We might be in other states, but I have a California focus here.
Most of us. Yeah.
Okay, good. And San Francisco is where I mostly work at. I work out of. So we have California unemployment insurance. We have California and San Francisco paid sick leave. We have California disability insurance we can tap into. California paid family leave, and then under FMLA, federal act here, we have the Families First Coronavirus Act and the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act, which were all created under the CARES Act. And it can get kind of confusing and messy, but we'll see, make some clarity of it here. California unemployment, which Bianca touched on, the maximum amount you can get is $450 a week. And that's based on usually your last 18 months of earnings. But the federal government has stepped in, and starting March 29th, starting March 29th, they started paying $600, and that goes till July 25th. So yeah, that's your $600 payment. They should have been distributed or starting to be distributed by now. During the pandemic, we're expanding the definition of who gets unemployment, which Bianca mentioned, and that's self-employed, independent contractors, gig workers, have been unable to work or have had their hours reduced. Also starting April 28th, as she mentioned, Bianca mentioned, the PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, will also be extended out to business owners and those with a limited work history. And as you can see, I've linked it. So anything in here that's in turquoise, you can click on it when we get a hold of that PDF I've sent out. Let's see.
Sarah, I'm going to have you turn off your video as well, because I think it might be just be me, but yeah, there was some fluctuations with your voice.
Okay. Yeah, my connection's not good. I'm out in the country, by the way. So, okay, yeah, employment insurance continued. This is for employers, information for them. Bianca touched on the work sharing program. I'm not going to go into that, but then we have a link here. And there's also the rapid response program, which is related to potential layoffs and plant closures. And I think that goes, you can call them and they'll give you guidance there. And I provided the link for that. And there should be some funds available for businesses. And wanted to note that I found some information that says certain nonprofit organizations that have elected the reimbursable method of paying for unemployment benefits will receive partial reimbursements. And again, when we go back to the California EDD coronavirus 2019 up here, the top, that's where you can link and find out more information on all of these. Again, employer information continued. Also, if you have to do layoffs, the governor suspended the requirements for the WARN Act, so you don't have to do the 60-day notice. And you also get an extension on filing your state payroll reports and deposits. So that's another aspect to what's happening around this pandemic for workers. And I guess in Los Angeles, it says that there's some additional assistance and funds for workers and businesses in Los Angeles. And here's the link to that. Beyond unemployment, we have paid sick leave. And for those of you who might not know the ins and outs of paid sick leave, it's basically employees who work at least 30 days in a year are eligible for paid sick leave in California, and they can begin using it on their 90th day of employment. 1 hour of paid sick leave is accrued for every 30 hours an employee works, and paid sick leave must carry over from year to year. In California, the cap is 48 hours, 6 days. And as an employer, you can restrict that use to just 24 hours at a time per year. So one of the ways that employees can also tap in for help if they're still employed is to use their paid sick time during this time. So this is some more information about California paid sick time, and I won't go into it deep here because you can read all this. I don't really enjoy reading slides, things that you guys can read on your own. And I'm sure you don't need me to read to you, but basically it's different from San Francisco paid sick leave. San Francisco, you know, not surprisingly, is more generous in their paid sick leave. And a lot of municipalities have followed San Francisco. So I really recommend you look up the rules for paid sick leave in your city. In San Francisco, they allow you to accrue up to 70, I think it's 72 hours. Yeah, 72 hours. And that's where you can get your balance. In California, it's 48, but San Francisco, it's 72. And an employee can use 40 hours or use all of it. But in San Francisco, they can create a cap at 40 hours instead of the 24 for use. And if you're an employer with 500 employees, San Francisco will reimburse you up to 5 days for applying sick time or giving your employees sick time. And they'll reimburse you up to $15.59, which is the minimum wage for those 5 days. But first, the employee needs to utilize those days, and then you submit paperwork to get reimbursement. In San Francisco, a doctor's note is not required during this time. Normally, an employer could request that a doctor's note be provided, but right now it's not requested. They're not needed. And And in terms of using sick time, employees can use it if they are having to isolate or quarantine, which is basically all of us. If the employee falls within the definition of vulnerable population, 60 plus, or has an underlying health condition, and if the business to temporarily cease operations, then because of public health or other public health official recommendations, being it's not an essential business to run, the employee can use paid sick time, sick leave for that time. If they want to care for a family member, they can use paid sick leave. Or if it's just childcare. Unless temporarily ceases to operate or childcare facility ceases to operate, they can use paid sick leave for that time. So again, I recommend you look at your particular city's paid sick leave standards or laws, because they've probably adjusted them to be more lenient around this pandemic. Another resource for people is California Short Disability and California Paid Leave. The California Paid Leave lives under the short-term disability program. And they basically, under California short-term disability, you would get 60 to 70% of your wages, depending on what your income was. And those benefits are not taxed. And the 1 week waiting period is also waived. And let's say you get sick during this time, an illness, an injury, a pregnancy, or childbirth, you can use disability insurance, and it provides paid benefits for up to 52 weeks. So that's one resource that I've been guiding some of our employees to go to. And paid family leave has to do with if you're caring for somebody who's ill or you're unable to work due to your caregiving duties. This will provide you up to 6 weeks of paid benefits. So those are two of the options there. We also have, under the Family Medical Leave Act, and created the Families First Coronavirus Act. And that became active on April 1st, and it's going to end on December 31st. It applies to all employers, and it allows employees, so usually under FMLA, you're not eligible, or an employee's not eligible for any protected leave until they've put in 1,250 hours of work. And in this case, they're saying employees are eligible after 30 days of employment. So it radically shifts the eligibility there. FCRA runs concurrently with FMLA. It's not in addition to, it's just 12 weeks.
Sarah, can you repeat
leave.
that? Can you repeat that? I think you
Repeat
went.
what?
FCRA is not, runs concurrent with, start with that.
FCRA runs concurrent with FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, which provides up to 12 weeks of paid leave. I mean, not paid leave. FMLA provides 12 weeks of unpaid leave, but it's job protected. FCRA runs concurrent with it. And depending on the leave that you use during FCRA, some of it is paid. So 10 weeks of FCRA leave are paid. The first 2 weeks are not. And they're paid at 2/3 of your salary. If you take FCRA leave, it has to be for reasons related to COVID-19. Also, under the FCRA Act, it also provided free COVID testing. It boosted unemployment, like we saw, like the $600 addition to unemployment insurance benefits. FCRA was part of that act of adding the $600. And it was a boost to food safety programs. And in addition to the state paid sick leave, it's providing federal paid sick leave. up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for employees. And those hours are dependent. If you're a full-time employee, you can get up to 80 hours. If you're a part-time employee, it's going to vary depending on the hours that you worked in your past, I think, couple weeks. And they do an average there.
Can I ask a question, Sarah? So this
Sure.
is, so if I'm an employee, if one of my clients or even my organization, I don't pay this. This is the stuff that I tell I give this information to my employees and say, hey, if you're having this issue, we can help get you these services. And then it's something that the federal government or the state government would pay. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Hey there, this is Bianca.
Yes.
I don't want to confuse anything because I'm not the expert here, but my understanding is that for employers whose employees are out sick due to coronavirus, they would be, how do I explain this? Come payroll tax period, the federal government would match that employee's wages 1-to-1. So in other words, 100% by way of payroll taxes. And if the employee would have been paid more than they would have been paid in a payroll tax, it would be, it would come as like a refund or whatever from the IRS. And if the employee is out sick because they are taking care of someone who has COVID-19, or if they have a child that their daycare has been interrupted or ceased because of COVID-19, then the employer would be reimbursed via payroll taxes at 2/3. And the same thing with the IRS, because the goal again is to make sure that employers can continue to keep their workforce even if they're out sick. And so the FFCRA was trying to help them do that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Does that sound right?
Yes. So basically, from the way you're describing it, it's basically upfront the employer pays, but they're getting reimbursed through payroll.
Absolutely, which we're finding can be somewhat unhelpful for a lot of Cameo's clients, or a lot of your clients, because you know what, a lot of people can't wait until payroll tax period comes to get reimbursed for that funds if they have no revenue.
Yes. And that means
Sarah, we're losing you, Sarah.
I don't know what to tell you.
There, you're
I'm
back.
in the country.
You're back. Start it. So start this whole piece over again.
That would lead to the slide, our last slide, Emergency Family Medical Leave Expansion Act, which lives under the FCRA Act. And that's back to what Bianca touched on, is if parents who have children that can't go to school or daycare because they're shut down and they have to stay home and be with those kids to do the childcare, FCRA, I don't even know this acronym, but basically FLUMIA, it basically is saying that, yes, 2/3 that parents will get paid for 10 weeks. They'll have job protected leave for up to 12 weeks. They would get paid 2/3 of their salary for 10 of those weeks. They can use PTO, they can use paid sick leave, they can take unpaid leave for 6 weeks. I see that this could be a problem for a lot of employers. Because there's a lot of parents out there and there's a lot of children that are not going to school. And this is a boon for parents. It's very helpful to them, but it could be hard on employers. However, there are exceptions to this rule. I didn't bring in the exceptions, but I have them Give me a moment here. I have them on my iPad. So let me see where I wrote them down. Exceptions to this is if you're a small business and you have less than 50 employees and the loss of the employee would jeopardize the business, and you don't need to comply. If the business does not generate enough revenue to provide paid leave, you don't need to comply. And if an employee goes on these leaves or asks to go on this leave and it's a key employee that's essential to the running of the business, then you don't need to comply. Lastly, if it leads to you having insufficient, then you don't need to comply. So those are the exceptions to these rules, but this is what's out there for employees that you should be aware of. That's it.
That's great. So that last one, there are some exceptions to that, being providing people with sick time, but the paid leave. But again, that paid leave is paid by the federal government.
In time they are. So
In time,
initially,
yeah.
like beyond in time, yes.
Yeah.
So you would get
Okay.
the money in time.
That was the confusing thing about me that I had when I was looking at all these things, is like, who is actually paying for all this stuff? Is it actually just saying, hey, employers, you have to do this, but the government is actually giving resources, maybe not right away, like Bianca said. Great. Does anybody have any questions? We can open it up. If Sarah, if you want to stop sharing your screen, we can open it up. You can take yourself off mute. Bianca, I'm not sure if you found whether or not ITIN numbers are able to operate and get the unemployment insurance, the PUA.
Yeah, so I know, I think it remains to be seen, but I know that there are efforts being made to make sure that folks who would typically fall between those cracks will be covered. Part of this is because it will be somewhat supplemented. How do I explain it? Because it will be going through the Employment Development Department, which is a state agency, leads me to believe that there will be more leeway than there would be if it was through the federal government. But I'm sorry, I don't have more information about that yet.
And that's fine. Like I said, I'm typing all these questions in, and I will send them to the EDD, and we will put them in the follow-up email. So the follow-up email for this one might take a little longer. There was another question about if a 1099 worker, I'm not sure I'm going to get this right, but if 1099 worker was deemed ineligible for regular unemployment, can they reapply as an independent contractor? We answered that question, and then the answer is yes, come Tuesday. And then what if they're paid under the table but still file taxes? Claudia, I'm unclear if I understand what that question is. If they don't have record of their taxes, they're not claiming it on their taxes, how are they going to claim unemployment? So if they are claiming it on their taxes, what are they claiming on their taxes? They have to I think they're probably going to have a 1099 to show what their wage was.
I mean, I think that they would have to have something. I just want to be definitive because I found my answer. If you are not a United States citizen, you cannot be paid PUA benefits unless you were legally permitted to work in the United States at the time that the services were performed. In addition, you must be authorized to work for any week of PUA benefits claimed to be eligible for payments. So remember that this is for PUA. This is the federal piece for folks that are independent contractors, self-employed individuals that typically aren't eligible. I'm sure a simple Google search would render whether or not undocumented individuals are currently eligible for unemployment insurance regular UI. I think that this might be one of the things that, I mean, Heidi, you would know this probably better than I would, but I think this is one of the things that the administration's kind of come under fire for, Governor Newsom, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't have better answer than you do. It's something we'll have to look into.
Oh, can I also state one thing too? I can't remember if this was covered, but with the FFCRA and the tax credits that are available to small businesses for keeping sick folks on payroll, that also interacts with Paycheck Protection Program. It can't be no double dipping there either.
Great. Well, it's 2 minutes to 2. Does anybody have one last question that they want to ask regarding any of these topics?
Can I flag one thing, Heidi?
You can say more than one thing.
Thank you. My colleague, Xiomara Pena, is doing a weekly Spanish webinar, in Spanish, obviously. And I think that if any folks, Claudia, I know you had a lot of these questions, if any folks are interested in these individuals, undocumented individuals too, that might be something that will be better addressed in those webinars, just because Xiomara Pena is kind of our resident expert when it comes to that constituency. So please, feel free to reach out to me, but we're having that every week because we've recognized that there's just a lack of knowledge. I mean, obviously, on my part and for these resources for those folks. So
Can you drop that link into chat real quick? Do you
Yeah.
have that?
Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, any other questions? Any other final comments? Sarah, do you want to make any other comment? Sarah, you want to pop your email also into chat so that people, and they'll also have it when I forward the PDF that you sent me with all those great links.
Yeah, my email's on the PDF too.
Great.
Yeah.
And yes, Star, we're definitely going to send out the slides. And I want to thank everybody. Thank Sarah for spending some time with us on her very busy job. And I want to thank Bianca as well for coming on. Bianca and Small Business Majority, great partners. And thank you all for doing the work that you're doing. And thank you to Cameo staff for coming on. Have a great afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, Heidi.
Bye.
Bye-bye.